Save the Semantics, episode 332. It is July 26th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Saturday evening / night. Recording this a little later than usual for just, whatever time permitted me. So this is what we're doing. I wanted to record earlier this week, but yeah, I just couldn't find the time to do so. So yeah, here I am. I was also considering waiting until Monday to record, but I kind of wanted to talk. I wanted to get on and just yap about some stuff. Really mostly wanted to get into Final Fantasy IX as I am near the end of the game. I'm basically at the end of the game. I'm at just, almost the point of no return. And I think I'll either, maybe I'll beat it either tonight or tomorrow night, depending on how I'm feeling. Maybe I kind of want to just savor that a little bit more. So I'll see. Maybe if I'm really craving it, I might just see it through to the end. But yeah, I wanna sit with it too. So who knows? I'll see. I see how I'm feeling. But yeah, close to the end of the game. I want to talk about that a little bit. There's been some rumors of a Nintendo Direct happening next week. Which will be interesting because it'll be sort of, right before the end of the month. I don't know timing wise if that's been a common thing that we've really seen. I feel like it's, I don't know. Usually it's June, September are kind of the set times for directs, but I mean, with a console launch, it probably kind of shifts things a little bit too. So it's not going to be on the same schedule as it usually is. But yeah, that might be interesting. If I decide to record on, if a direct happens, I'll be talking it on the day of. But if, maybe it'll be worth getting into kind of the more, if a direct is announced on say Monday or a Wednesday, I'll talk about just giving my predictions and everything like that. So I kind of want to, save that conversation for then, until it's actually been announced. I'm going to kind of hold off on that, but yeah, it's been this past week's been all right. I feel like my sleep has been a bit wonky. It just hasn't been the best. It's been very noticeable. My kind of grogginess and tiredness has sort of carried into the weekend. So I'm going to try to get some good sleep tonight. And really, get some more good sleep, on top of, what I was able to sleep yesterday. So that is kind of my goal here. Just getting more rest and everything like that. I think I've also noticed that I feel that I've been a little overstimulated with just kind of digital stuff. I've just been, I'm on the computer all day, and then my downtime, my relaxing time is playing games, right? So that doesn't exactly help. And I think it's sort of with the excitement of the Switch 2 maybe kind of led up to me not being the most disciplined with my sleep and stuff. But I also think maybe there's some other factors too of just not, I don't know, maybe just not, not necessarily setting and maintaining a sort of regular sleep schedule and timing, you know what I mean? So maybe that's part of that. 'Cause I feel like up until this point, I've been pretty good about it. But I think I kind of want to try to get back on track, as soon as I'm able to. But yeah, I want to talk about Final Fantasy IX. I also want to talk about what I'm thinking of playing next, So I have a lot of games on my docket. a lot of games in my library slash backlog that I haven't played, that I haven't gone through. I was considering maybe like getting back into into the BioShock series with BioShock 2. Depending on how long that is, like that might be in consideration. I still also have Okami. I have, I want to get into Suikoden sometime this year. I am a little, I'm kind of, it's like, how quickly do I want to jump into another JRPG after finishing Final Fantasy IX? Although I haven't, it's nothing like a 100-hour JRPG, but I will, I am thinking of playing both games. So back to back, that might be quite a lot of time. And I'm also thinking, I mentioned this as well, Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, like those are kind of on my list as well. I haven't purchased the games yet. But I mentioned this before as kind of being two games that were, the series that was kind of, a bit of a factor in me determining in getting the Switch 2, and then also just games that I've been meaning to play for a very long time. So I am I am very intrigued by them. But what I decided to do is The Witcher 3, the complete edition, was on sale. And I just felt like I couldn't pass up this time because I don't know, like sales happen all the time, but I'm also like, I'm not constantly, I check the eShop, on a decent basis, but I'm not like constantly checking, you know what I mean? So I don't know the next time there is going to be a sale for the game. Or last year, I think there was a sale, or maybe earlier this year, for about the same price. But I don't know, I just didn't feel the desire to get it at that time. And I also didn't have the time to play the game either. So, that was kind of what was on my mind. But this time, I have a little bit of, I'm going to have some time, before I get busy again. So this might be a good opportunity for me to get into The Witcher 3. I have looked at, the time to, beat the game and everything like that. So I don't know, it might take me, I don't know. They said like, if looking up on how long to beat, it said about 50-ish hours or so. So, I mean, I'm not like in a rush by any means to complete games like that, but I do want to, kind of what I've done with 9 was I really made a concerted effort to try and go through the story, and to just replay it, because I just had such a strong desire to do so. I've been, it's been an incredibly long time since I've played it. So that's kind of what, I made like a really, sort of an effort to just want to go through the story and everything like that, which has been really great. It's been a wonderful experience. But I just, Witcher 3's been on kind of my want to playlist for a very long time. I've heard so many good things about it. Obviously, it's been, praised to just like a crazy level. CD Projekt Red has a pretty, big reputation, and also, they're also responsible for Cyberpunk. So just kind of wanting to kind of get into that world, wanting to delve into like a real kind of medieval setting, magic and sword and magic kind of setting. And I had kind of that feeling maybe earlier on when I kind of had this feeling of wanting to play Skyrim a little bit, because I played a little bit of the Oblivion remastered on at my friend's place, and that was kind of like, ooh, I really like this feeling. So maybe, I think The Witcher 3 is a different game, also narrative driven as well. And also, I've heard like the side quests and also like the additional like DLC is also pretty good as well. So yeah, I mean, I have the complete edition now. So I, I think, I don't know, I'll see how I'm feeling. Maybe I'll take a break from kind of like super lengthy story driven games, but I don't know. Maybe I who knows if I'm feeling it, I might just like jump right into it. But I've been really wanting to pick it up and play it, so I did just that, and I'm really I will play it this year. I don't know if it's going to be soon, if it's or if it's going to be in a little while, but I also looked up beforehand kind of like the performance of The Witcher 3 on Switch 2, and it seems to perform pretty well. And it did perform well on the original Switch. The port did. It was considered kind of one of those like miracle ports to Switch, along with a Nier Automata, and but just kind of just hearing about the performance, it's really not like a huge thing, but like it would be cool to get a bit more of a premiere experience with like a AAA game like that. So yeah, I'm excited. I don't know if I'm gonna play it next or if I'm gonna play it later down the line, later this year, but I now have it on my library, so it's gonna be sort of higher priority for me. I was thinking maybe Donkey Kong too, but I don't know. I feel really it's part of it is the price tag. It's like how much do I want to shell out for a full price game right now? I'm not totally sure, considering that I already spent whatever amount I did for the console itself. So I might, yeah, unless it's like something that I'm really, and I've heard great things about Donkey Kong, but I'm also like, it's not, the highest priority for me. I loved Super Mario Odyssey. I know this was the same team that made that. And I love that game. But I don't know. It's just not, it's not necessarily like the thing that I really want to play. I do want to play it sometime, but maybe that could be like a winter game. Who knows? Depends on, yeah, who knows? Yeah, again, it's just, yeah, full price game. Unless it's something that I really want, I think, I'm sort of like, I'm kind of just sort of debating that, you know what I mean? But anyways, let's talk about Final Fantasy IX, as I've sort of made some pretty big progressions in the story and now have reached kind of the end game of it. I mean, just like the pacing and everything continues to really impress me with this. Like the fact that it is so well thought out in terms of going from location to location. It's just so well done, and I really just kind of am like, it just feels like this game was so well, well thought out, and in terms of just the way things are meant to kind of progress, the way just like the accompanying music goes with a certain location or a certain character theme and everything like that. I know that this game is kind of a love letter in a way to older Final Fantasy fans, and it definitely feels that way with homages to certain classes, white mage, black mage, you got your typical kind of warrior types and whatnot, thief. So it just does like for me, who's someone, I haven't beaten all of the games, but I have dabbled in like Final Fantasy V. I've beaten Final Fantasy VI. I played a little bit of, I think I played a little bit of Final Fantasy IV when I was younger. I don't really remember too much, but just like the older games and kind of the, sort of the inception of the series, or closer to the inception of the series, and kind of the core idea of it. And as you progress through the story, you get much more allusions to that. You get honestly kind of direct references to it that I'm seeing, where they directly reference the concept of like the crystal, which was sort of prominent in the first game and has continued to be throughout the series. Like, that was definitely something that I noticed in being like a huge, kind of like the focal point of things. And then also just like the concept of just like, it's sort of like a through line, I would say, maybe carrying forward from something like Final Fantasy VII, is this concept of like returning back to the earth, the concept, the Ouroboros tale of just, the cycle of, you know, life, death, rebirth, like those kinds of things, right? I think that feels like a pretty common thing that we see across the series, and I think that's very pretty well established. So I think it's been really cool and fun to go through this game again, looking at the various things that it does in terms of, there's like certain motifs that you can kind of recognize. There's motifs that are carried throughout the soundtrack, from the opening theme, right? So I think it's just it just is like, it's like the Final Fantasy game, I think, in my opinion. I mean, it's my favorite, I would say. This and Final Fantasy VI, I think, are still some of my favorites. Like, I loved, maybe upon just, recollection and everything, maybe 7 and 10 kind of move up there. But I just have such a fond memory, especially of 9, in regards to just, the music and just kind of the adventure that you go on. That it's definitely, I feel kind of almost vindicated in a way, just going through this again. Of course there are frustrations, and of course it's really slow at times, especially like the battle system and everything. So that part is definitely tough to kind of, go back to, but with the quality of life inclusions with this sort of newer edition of the game, like, it is way more easier to kind of handle that and deal with it. Grinding is not really an issue if you set it up in the right way. So I think it's just been such a great kind of experience. I know I'm kind of repeating myself at this point, but it's really impressive kind of what they were able to do with this game, and how much kind of the story is able to flow from one plot point to the other, to one location to the other. And so I'm just kind of really impressed with that. So I kind of, some notes that I've been kind of taking throughout, the idea of life and what it means to be alive and stuff like that, I think is a pretty strong theme throughout, especially with characters like Zidane and Vivi and whatnot. They're kind of like those two characters, and I guess maybe you could probably put Garnet too, are like that kind of trio of characters, I would say, are kind of the heart and soul of this game. I might have said like Vivi is sort of the embodiment of this game, which I think is still fair, but what he kind of deals with and how much he kind of grows and how confident he becomes, especially towards, as the game progresses, and how he's like, he has like this conviction of what he feels like he needs to do. And it's really, I really am just like, I loved seeing his progression through this game, him especially. Like, he's the character that definitely grows the most, him along with Garnet, just becoming stronger in what they feel and what they believe is the right thing to do, right? In, being, just being there for like Zidane when he goes through his like little struggle, and being there for the rest of the party as well. So I really just kind of admire that, And yeah, Vivi's my favorite character. If I hadn't made that clear, or if I hadn't said it before, yeah, he's just the best. Like, he is like one of the best characters in this series. Not just in this game, but in this series, there's a reason why he's just this little black mage character, this little boy, is just such a iconic character. And yeah, I think kind of leading into the end of the game, like, I know what happens leading into the end of the game, like, it gives like such a, like, it's such a powerful kind of thing, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just really kind of appreciate that, you know what I mean? And yeah, I'm just like a huge fan of just the way in which he's just like progressing through the game and everything. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like the point there. I also wanted to touch upon Freya a little bit, because I mentioned her, I believe last time, when, essentially her sort of race of people pretty much just gets like, it's like a genocide basically. And yeah, it's like, I was curious. I do think, and this is sort of like a common criticism, whatever, where her character arc does feel like it kind of comes to a stop, or rather it ends maybe a bit prematurely. But I think what they do, a decent thing that they do, is that they show that her character does change in a way too, in small ways. I mean, the biggest indication of that was kind of the conversation that she has with Amaranth, I think at Treno, or I don't remember exactly where it was. But they had like they had a conversation, and Amaranth was just like talking like, like I don't know, Freya was being a little bit like, at the very beginning, when the first time you meet her at like the bar, like, she's very like standoffish. She like butts heads with Zidane. And then kind of at this point in the game, it feels like she's a lot more outgoing. She's willing to kind of be a bit more expressive, and that kind of thing. It's like a little small detail, but I do think it was like a nice touch that they included that sort of moment there. And it's not a lot, and I do wish that they had done a little bit more with her character. Maybe this is where the remake would come in handy. I don't know. But it was like nice, it's like a good little thing there, you know what I mean? Speaking of Amaranth, just not the best character, probably the weakest character in the game, unfortunately. He's just not given a lot to do. He's just kind of like, oh, he's like the rival, like Zidane's rival. Like, it's not. Yeah, I can see what they were trying to do there, but yeah, it's just not. He's just not very interesting, unfortunately. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. But yeah, I other notes here I mentioned. Yeah, just like, I think also like I also don't remember this, but there's a lot of pre-rendered cutscenes, FMVs. There's quite a lot of them, and I'm kind of surprised by that. Like when you get like a big set piece, like a big battle scene, or a big, like an attack, or just like a big moment in the game, you're gonna get like a cutscene with it, which I think is pretty impressive. I just feel, I don't know. I always thought they were like not super common, but it's actually, they happen at like the right time, and it kind of emphasizes the moment and the mood and the scene. It fits really well. But yeah, just kind of a note on that. I also said here, similar concepts to Final Fantasy VII, where the planet and nature are their own entities, that have their own desires and wants. And then also the concept of, those that come from the earth or that they'll come from the planet eventually sort of return to it. So there's a little bit of that too going on. You got the live stream in 7, and that's kind of, you get a little bit of that with 9, although it's like conceptually it's a little different. It's more about like souls and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just, yeah, most of my other notes are kind of smaller, not really. I'm just kind of reiterating a lot of what I've already said. But I as I get closer to the end of the game, I do think about kind of the way in which characters who, just like how they've changed over the course of the game. Others are a lot more apparent than some. And I think it does like a really good job at sort of composing this party of, just all these different groups of people. I mean, that's kind of the essence of like a JRPG, right? And I think this game just does such a good job of embodying that, of, bringing together all of these characters from these different backgrounds and, who have like a common goal and who are able to kind of better each other. You get to see Steiner finally acknowledge Zidane as an ally, as a companion, as the leader, like in towards the end of the game, and him protecting him when when he needs help. Like it's really good. It's really good. So the only thing that was a bit, I've had, some smaller criticisms of the game here and there. The one thing that really had nothing to do with the game itself, but more so, it was more about just like the heart. It was either like a software thing issue. So there's like a famous scene in the game where Zidane is like feeling low. He discovers kind of the truth about himself, and he's feeling down and out of it, and he needs to kind of get sort of brought back up, and he needs to get just kind of his confidence back up, and his his allies to come to his aid. And there's a famous music track called Not Alone that plays through this sequence. And it's one of the more memorable sequences in the game. But unfortunately for me, my copy of the game, so I died. You have to go through like a few battles. And I died in one of those moments. And so I had to restart from a certain point, where it auto saved. And that unfortunately like cut off the music. And so I had to, I was playing through the rest of the sequence without the music that would accompany this like emotional scene in the game. And it was funny and also kind of disappointing too. So basically what I did was I went on YouTube, I found the track, and I just played that song while I played the game, while there was like no music going on. It was kind of funny, but I made a bit of a compromise, I think what happened was, in the original kind of file of the game, the way that the game is originally supposed to go is that you play through the sequence. You're technically not, like, you shouldn't have to die. Like, you should feel like, oh, I need to get through this, I need to get through this scene. But that's just not what happened. And yeah, I ended up I had a couple of party members that were too weak, and they got, they just died really quickly. So I had to finagle some things here and there. Just unfortunately, when I went back to the point in which the autosave kind of kicked back in, the music was completely gone. So I was like, I could go back all the way back to like the save point, and maybe it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But Yeah, it was just kind of funny, you know what I mean? It's just like this like really important scene in the game, and just like the music just completely goes away, and you're just hearing like the battle sounds of, you know, the attacking and stuff. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but it is what it is. Just kind of funny going back to that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to really add. I think I'll talk about the game, you know, a little bit more once I beat it, and give kind of like my final thoughts on what it's been like replaying this game, replaying one of my favorite games. It's just been like, it's both been kind of like a trip down memory lane, but also, and I mean, coincidentally, or rather, you know, maybe it just in on purpose, you know, purposefully, this game does have some concepts regarding memory and that kind of thing, and the importance of memory. So you know, maybe there's a bit of a real life in game connection there. But I, yeah, I mean, I'll give kind of my full thoughts on just what it's been like to replay this and experience these things again. I might just be, again, reiterating some of my thoughts here. But it's been cool. This was a cool practice, of going through a game that I hold with a lot of importance. And, it's been good. It's been good. I think conceptually there's this idea, and maybe I might have mentioned this, where nostalgia clouds your vision of what you played before. You know what I mean? Where you look at things with rose tinted glasses. And I think that can apply in a lot of instances, right? Like when you're much younger and you're watching a TV show, that TV show could have been the greatest thing that you ever seen. But if you go back when you're, you know, older, it's just not going to hold a candle. It's just not going to be the same experience, right? Because you're viewing it from a different perspective. And you could argue the same for the, you know, games and just other media as well. But I think with something like this game, it's a little different because of just because of the way the game was developed, the way in which, you know, the like who this game was kind of made for. This game was made for like kids primarily, right? Sure, but there is this feeling that there is no like limitation to who can play this. There is no limitation of with the age in which you can experience something like this. And I think a lot of concepts in this game can still resonate with you, even if you are not necessarily, you know, the intended audience. You know what I mean? Or rather, you know, maybe not intended audience, but maybe you're not of the demographic that was sort of primarily made to play this. I guess that's sort of the same thing. But you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, there's concepts and things that you can take away, even if it's simpler, even if it's laid out in simpler terms and simpler, you know, storylines, there are still important things that you can take away from something. The importance of what it means to be alive, finding meaning within existence, as even if it feels meaningless at times. The concept of valuing just life in general, in times of struggle, finding ways to persevere, like all of these things that I think are common across a lot of the games that I play and a lot of my favorite games. But, you know, I can see these messages over and over in different instances, and I can still find something to take away from that. And this game is an instance of it where I am able to kind of go back into it with, you know, a different, older perspective than when I did as a kid. and take away not just the sort of the same messages that I had when I was younger, but also find some other things that I found to be interesting and meaningful as well. So I think a combination of all of these things lead to it being a very fulfilling experience of going back and playing through a game that I haven't played in like 15 plus years. So it's been great. Yeah, I don't know how much more I can really add to that after beating the game, because I'm like right there, and I kind of know what to expect. But I do want to hold off to maybe add some more points once I beat the game, and yeah, so I'll probably do that maybe after this weekend, maybe on Monday. Will be the next time that I record, assuming maybe if there is also going to be an announcement of a Switch Direct or a Nintendo Direct, and I'll talk about and give kind of my predictions on what's going to pop up there. So yeah, anyways, just wanted to hop on and talk some more Final Fantasy, talk about other gaming related stuff, other things in general, and yeah, I'll catch back up later on Monday. All right, recording this on July 28th, 2025. It is a Monday afternoon / evening. Nice little, not a bad start to this week. Just wanted to hop on to talk some more Final Fantasy IX, talk about some other things. I decided what I'm gonna actually try to do today is I think I'm gonna do a predictions, and I know that's a little ballsy and a little risky. Risky, as in like this is low stakes. There's no stakes at all, but you know what I mean. Because I might end up being completely wrong, which I'm used to. I'm used to at this point. But I thought it might be fun to just kind of get the juices flowing, starting off this week by talking about giving my predictions on what a Switch 2 Direct, or rather a Switch Direct, or just a Direct in general, is going to look like this week, because it seems heavy speculation points that it's going to happen this week. It feels like a lot of people are pretty confident about that, so I'm gonna put my confidence in them, and just kind of expect that it's gonna come to be true. So yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna save it when I'm just gonna put it out there. When it does happen, I can talk about it without having to kind of jump back and forth. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna just do a bit of a larger compiled episode of this past weekend and today, and then just move on from there. But let's talk some more Final Fantasy IX, because I wrapped it up yesterday. I finished the game. I went through the story, finished it through to the end, and it was really special. It was really special to kind of go through that experience again with a kind of a new, fresh perspective from someone who hasn't touched the game, who hasn't looked at the game in 10, 15 years. And it was really special. I can still kind of say, after going through it this time around, that this is still one of my favorite games. It's really up there for me. It means a lot to me. The characters, the music, all of that, which I've been talking quite a bit on over the last couple of weeks. Those things remain true, and those things still hold today. And it just continues to sort of, I can kind of look at it and justify, I don't need to justify anything being my favorite thing, but I feel that I'm kind of confirming and reaffirming that this is one of my favorite games, and one of my favorite things that from not only my childhood, but also just in general too, and just sort of signifies both what this game means to me and also kind of what the series, the Final Fantasy series, means to me overall. There's just so many themes and so many elements that come from this game, that just kind of resonated with me. All of the things that I love to see from these kinds of stories about, you know, just, people, just individual characters going through something and figuring out what it is that they're dealing with and how they come to terms with what they're dealing with, how they sort of uplift each other up and come together to help aid each other in reaching their goal, and just finding ways to kind of persevere and thrive. And these are all things that I find, I can kind of see this storyline and kind of I can see retellings of this storyline over and over again in different mediums and different games. And I don't think I'll get necessarily sick of it. It just really depends on how effective that storytelling is. And I think in this case, it is very effective. I think it does an incredible job of conveying the struggles of, especially kind of the main characters of the story. I would say, the main characters being Zidane, Vivi, and Garnett, and just kind of portraying their story in a really remarkable, lens, and providing kind of, just really conveying kind of the progression that they make throughout the story and sort of what the eventual end of their storylines kind of look like, and sort of the kind of the emotional, I wouldn't want to say payoff, because that's, I don't know if that's like the right way to put it, but just kind of the emotional climax of the story and the end of the game, I think does such a good job of capturing just what this story means and what it means to me too. I'm not I'm not afraid to admit that I got kind of emotional at the end of this game, which I think is interesting in comparison to when I first beat this game. Like, I understood the emotions a little bit, like I could kind of get a sense of what the game was going for, but I was much younger, so I just didn't have that same level of, I don't know, just maybe the same same emotional maturity to fully grasp the story, you know what I mean? So I think, I think it does a really good job of kind of pulling at the emotional, strings of as it kind of reaches the end of the game. Kind of speaking of that, I have noticed, and this is maybe a bit of a tangent, I have noticed that I have become a lot more receptive to like emotional kind of moments in different mediums more recently as I've gotten older. I'm much more like willing to let myself, kind of feel those moments and cry if I have to. I think maybe that there was like a sense of, when I was younger, there was like a little bit of that, like kind of holding back, you know what I mean? But as I've grown, I think I've just accepted that it's perfectly fine to feel those kinds of things, you know what I mean? And it's good to feel those things too. So that's been kind of, part of a benefit to experiencing these games, either for the first time or again, in this case with Final Fantasy IX, just to feel something too. And that's been really, it's been really powerful in a lot of ways. But one of the things, I kind of noted this as the game reached its end, was just kind of continuing to comment on how much like each of the characters have kind of shown that they've needed each other to grow, especially in the case of like Zidane, really acknowledging that Vivi's strength is what sort of helped him make the decision in the end, in terms of saving a particular character. And I I think that was just really it was really effective in how they continue to sort of show characters, and acknowledging that those characters have had different impacts on, throughout with characters in the party. So I I just think that's like a good way to kind of like, hey, I was able to make this decision because of what you went through and how you showed that you could be strong. Like, I really like that kind of acknowledgement, and I like that sort of the explicit nature of them saying that and stating that to the character, you know what I mean? And especially in this kind of medium too, I think it helps, and especially in sort of this older, older video game where it's a little difficult to try to capture like the facial expressions of characters. The text is what's really useful. I think that the text has to be written in a way for it to show that the characters have grown and have changed throughout the course of this game, right? You just can't rely on, there's no voice acting in this game, and that has definitely changed as we've as we've transitioned. And I mean, there's a clear transition from Final Fantasy 9 to 10, right, where the voice acting does play a significant role in capturing the character's emotions and whatnot. But prior to that, you had to make use with different techniques, and I think text is one of the more obvious examples of capturing like the kind of the what a character is going through effectively. So yeah, that's kind of something that I noted. I'll say one criticism, which I think is pretty common across a lot of fans with Final Fantasy 9 is the last boss of the game. Just to kind of give a little brief sense of what it is. Basically, it's like it is it's sort of the embodiment, the kind of the it's not really a character per se, but it is more the personification of an idea of this like fear of just like the turbulent emotions that go about with being human, all of like the quote unquote negative aspects of what it is to be human, and essentially the concept of like returning to zero or returning to nothing, which I think is pretty, I don't know, I've seen this kind of theme in a lot of cases with a lot of the antagonists in games. So this is something that I've become a lot more familiar with. I think I understand the reason for this last boss's existence in the game, but it just doesn't feel like it belongs conceptually. I like it. I totally understand it. I understand why it's there, but I just don't think it really works out when you've already laid out kind of who the final antagonist of this game should be, and you could sort of use those same thematic elements and apply it to Kuja, who's kind of the primary antagonist of this game. You could really do the same. So to have this other essence and other entity be kind of its own boss was a little bit of a, I don't know, it just didn't really hit the same. I just don't think it felt like kind of a last minute addition to me. And I think this has been sort of noted a lot and talked about ever since this game has come out. Again, I get it. I understand why that last boss is there, but I think those concepts could have been applied and used more effectively instead of this kind of like long text of like this kind of conversation between Zidane and this other new character who just kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. I think it could have been better done. So that's kind of my only minor my only kind of minor criticism as we sort of towards the end of the game. But really everything else, I mean, I adore this game. I think this is one of those things where I would be happy to kind of replay this on occasion, maybe every every 10 years or so, or whenever, But I think just giving it time in between and then just kind of revisiting it, I think would be a fun sort of activity to do, right? Because I mean, now that I mean, it's useful now because I'm able to kind of implement that, and now that I'm kind of getting older and stuff, maybe every 5 years, because then I can replay it more frequently, if I have the time to do so. But I think that just might be an effective tool, and just sort of reminding me, like, yeah, the basis for what I appreciate games kind of was derived from this period, for when I started playing games like Final Fantasy IX, like a Dragon Quest V or Final Fantasy VI, those kinds of games earlier on in my childhood. These, the kind of the more story-based games that I started playing that deal with more, darker issues. Like Dragon Quest V is not, by modern standards, is not crazy, but I do think that there is kind of this classical tale element to it, which does deal with a little bit more darker themes, including, just some forms of trauma and familial, just kind of familial things that you just sort of have to deal with. Like, there's a lot that you can take away from these older games as well. And I think that's sort of what's shaped me, and what kind of like the starting point for the games and the things that I've grown to appreciate in stories and in games too. So I think it just kind of all sort of ties back, and revisiting this game in particular kind of was a reminder of that, not just, on top of just kind of the, just being able to kind of experience just this fun adventure again, but also being able to re-examine these things with a more, with a more just older lens, and kind of taking away a bit more than I originally did, because I'm assuming, like, if I replay this again later down the line, I'm going to take away even more things from it, like, that I didn't notice before. And maybe I'll do something where I'll focus, maybe I'll still focus on the story, but maybe I'll do a little bit more side quests, because this time around when I played this, I really just primarily focused on the story. I wasn't really doing any of the side quests. I wasn't doing any of the chocobo hunting or anything like that. So, maybe the next time I play, I will do that. Maybe I'll have a bit more of a full-fledged playthrough. And then maybe pick up some more things along the way, and maybe kind of flesh out the world a little bit more. But outside of that, I think there's just just even without those things, I think I was able to have a pretty fulfilling experience with this. And I want to try to do this with other games as well. I've been really wanting to replay. A big one for me is Dragon Quest V, is one that I've been wanting to replay. But I don't have they have a remade, kind of like, not almost remastered version of the game on the DS, which I'm sure is incredibly expensive nowadays to find a copy. I do have the PS2 version of the game, which is how I originally played it, which was Japan only. But kind of my old PS2 is just not really up to standards anymore, and unfortunately it doesn't run games like it used to. So I'm gonna have to try to opt for getting the 3DS version of the game, or maybe be a little patient and see if there is going to be like a remake of the game, or a sort of remastered version of that game, and hope that it comes out sometime in the future. But there's other games on my list that I've been kind of meaning to replay. Wind Waker is definitely one. That was a really Also another favorite game during when I was younger, and I still consider it to be one of my favorite games. And I do have the opportunity to play that now since it's on NSO, so I might do that sometime. I mean, there's other games on there that I would like to replay, but there's so many games out there too. So it's like I kind of want to I have to try to leverage, what I value and that kind of thing. But now that Final Fantasy IX is done, I can look forward to the next game on my list. And what am I thinking of playing? I mean, there's so much out there. I still have games on my list, which I've talked about. And I am feeling, and I know this goes against my recently adopted kind of philosophy of supplementing shorter games with longer games, maybe taking a bit of a break in between. But I'm really itching to get into The Witcher 3, which I picked up this weekend. So I'm just kind of feeling this kind of medieval feel. I've been watching this anime called Frieren, which has gotten fairly popular, I would say. And that I think the music and kind of the atmosphere of that show kind of reminds me of just going into, I don't know, just sort of the medieval sword and shield and magic kind of setting of a world. And I mentioned this when I was playing the Oblivion remastered, like just a little bit of it, and kind of maybe this feeling of wanting to finally get into Skyrim. But The Witcher 3 has been on my list for a very long time. It's been a game that I've been wanting to play for forever. It's been I've been thinking of playing this game for, I don't even know, 10 years maybe. So yeah, I think I think it's worthwhile to get into this and finally experience this game and see what it's about. I've only heard great things about it. So I would like to kind of I think it's a good time. I was thinking maybe I'll play a shorter game and that kind of thing, and who knows, maybe I'll still supplement that while I start my playthrough of The Witcher 3. But who knows, maybe I'm just fully into The Witcher 3. I have been playing like a decent amount of just kind of Mario Kart here and there, just doing like maybe a race a day. And so that's been kind of fun. It's just nothing, not too committed. Like I'm not really super committed into doing everything, but it's fun. It's fun. I understand people's reservations of Mario Kart World and the fact that there are just things that feel maybe a little half-baked and everything, but I've never looked at something of a Mario Kart to be this super expansive game. I totally get it in terms of this game and the price point and everything, but just within the scope of Mario Kart and the rest of the franchise, it's not, I'm not going into it expecting a ton. I'm just expecting just a fun time, and honestly, that's kind of all I really need. I mean, even in the case of Super Smash Brothers, I really, the majority of my time playing that game has been just playing against CPU, 1v1 and level 9 CPUs, and that's kind of just all I had fun doing, right? And I could see myself just clocking in and doing Knockout Tour every once in a while in Mario Kart World. So that's kind of all I need. And if there's more additional content that comes its way, and hopefully it comes, hopefully there is more additional content, because it is as sort of the flagship title of the Switch 2, I think it should have a little bit more going for it. Absolutely, I totally get that. I'm just having fun with it, so I'm okay with it now. But it would be nice to see a little bit more added to it as time goes along. Okay, let's get into Switch, or rather, just Nintendo Direct predictions for this week. I am assuming, because there was no announcement today, that there will be a Direct on Thursday, and the announcement will be made on Wednesday. So that is my prediction. It would be funny if there was none, and I was just completely, I was just like, wow, actually people were wrong this time. People were actually wrong this time. But it seems people are pretty confident about a Direct happening. So I just want to get my predictions out there. I have some things this week that might come in the way of me being able to record. So I just want to get some thoughts out there while I can. So I think for the most part, it feels as though the lineup for the remainder of this year is fairly set. I mean, you got Mario Kart World as the launch title. You got Donkey Kong Bonanza as kind of the big first-party Nintendo game, just sort of to supplement Mario Kart. And then you got kind of the collection of the Switch 2 editions for games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and some other games as well. You got Metroid Prime 4 coming out later this year, I'm assuming. And what else? Pokemon also coming out later this year. So it feels like for first party, I think it has a decent number of titles, right? Maybe it's not a lot, but honestly, games like, the games that have already come out are kind of the system sellers right now. And then you got Pokemon, which I think is going to be huge, right? Especially the performance upgrade that it's going to get on Switch 2. I think is going to be massive, and it's going to be a huge kind of attraction for people wanting to purchase as well. I also read there was a survey that was done recently that surveyed like Nintendo fans, I think, and Nintendo fans in Japan specifically, and it says that the demographics of the Pokemon franchise was something along the lines of 60% male and 40% female. And the age range, the average age was around 34 or something like that. It was like mid 30s was the average age range for Pokemon, which is hilarious, right? So I think based off of that, you can kind of assume that one, you can kind of assume, again, this is a general assumption, people who are older will tend to have more disposable income. So people in that kind of age range of 30 to 40 and older are going to have more income to spare in buying, maybe buying like newer consoles. So like, I think there is going to be additional, more Switches that are going to be sold because of Pokemon. And I think the older kind of generation, the older demographic of people are going to be the ones that make that purchase. And I just think it's so interesting that there has been this sort of shift of, as the series has progressed and gotten older, the crowd that started off playing the game when Pokemon Red and Blue, when it originally came out, they have kind of grown together with the series and have continued to maybe stick through with it, and they make up the majority of the fan base for Pokemon instead of maybe younger players. I think I'm sure there are still a ton of kids that play Pokemon, absolutely, but I think it is less so in comparison to maybe, you know, maybe earlier on in the Pokemon franchise, right? I mean, younger kids are playing other stuff too. I mean, I think, especially within like American demographics, I'm sure that's probably going to be pretty similar as well, where older people are going to make up more of the fan base than kids too. Like, I mean, kids nowadays, I don't even know what kids nowadays are playing. Like, it's probably stuff like Fortnite, Minecraft, other web games, Roblox, free-to-play games. Like, those are kind of the games that get their attention, I feel like. Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. I'm completely out of touch. I have no idea what kids play, what kids play nowadays. But that feels, it does feel kind of like this generational kind of gap where Pokemon is no longer, it's still massive, and I'm sure kids still love it, but I don't think it doesn't have the same foothold as it did before, because there are other mediums and other games out there and other game franchises out there that kind of take up the attention away from Pokemon. So I just find that to be kind of interesting, and I just wanted to note that. But just kind of going back to the direct, I do believe Pokemon is going to have, it's definitely going to be a huge kind of push for additional Switch 2 sales. My other kind of, I haven't really predicted anything at this point, but I think a big portion of the direct is going to focus on third party and what, third party games that are going to be brought on. I think they're going to talk about Elden Ring. They're going to probably talk about some of the Atlas Sega games of Persona. You got Yakuza as well, from Atlas, right? I think isn't Yakuza an Atlas property? I kind of forgot, but I mean, they just released Yakuza 0, so I'm sure they would try to kind of advertise that a little bit more too. Persona. You got Metaphor, Refantazio. It would be cool to see something like Expedition 33 pop up. I mean, that would be an instant buy for me. But yeah, a lot of kind of the more bigger third party games, I think, are going to have a bit more of a presence here in this upcoming direct. It just feels kind of like it's leaning that way, right? I mean, if they were able to get those other games, I think that would be a pretty big, it'd be a pretty big push, right? And I think along with that, you might get some instances of other ports as well, and other upgraded versions of Switch games. There were free, if you go to the eShop in the Nintendo Switch 2 version, you'll see that, or I think, was it? Yeah, I think it's either the eShop or the NSO page. I'm not exactly sure, but you can see games that have gotten free upgrades, including just like all of the Zelda games, Mario Odyssey, I think Mario Bowser's Fury, so games like that. So I think there are going to be other games that get Switch 2 versions, or maybe even free upgrades of the games. And I think that would sort of entice people like me to maybe revisit some of those games and check out how much more significantly better the performance is for those older Switch games. I have yet to see any updates for Switch, Switch 2 versions and Switch 2 upgrades for Xenoblade, which I have been really hoping for. I mean, I'm going to replay those games regardless, right? And I'll be playing those games till I die, but it would be really great to see an upgrade. I think that would be huge. Like that would be a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion, right? To really showcase the power of the Switch 2. I know you have like a lot more high fidelity games, such as Cyberpunk that is able to kind of capture the hardware better and able to kind of showcase the hardware better. But as a fan, it would be really nice to see those upgrades being done and those patches being added to for the Xenoblade games. So that is kind of what I'm hoping for. Fingers crossed. I don't know if that's something that they would announce in a direct like this, but it would be cool to see something like that being showcased a little bit more. Anything else? I think that's it for now, for me at least. I'm sure they would show some other games, other third-party stuff, and, in a sizzle reel or whatever, but, probably stuff that I don't really particularly care about. But, you know what they haven't talked about is, has the Trails in the Sky remake come out yet? Like, that's something that I would like to play. I'm actually going to look that up and look into it after this, because I have heard nothing about it recently, like since it got announced. So that might be something that they kind of add in. I mean, that would be cool to get, further confirmation about. But yeah, I think that would be big. Yeah, but other than that, I think it would be pretty standard, but hopefully some good stuff in there. Here's a bit of a hot take. I was looking over, as I was sort of making my decision on, what I wanted to play next and everything. I was kind of considering this because, I think there is this expectation that Persona 3 Reload and Metaphor especially are going to get ports to Switch 2. And, I know the reception for those games are really great. But I don't know if I want to. I don't know how I'm feeling about like Persona-esque games. Persona games and Persona-esque games. I did a review for Persona 5 last year. Was it last year? I don't remember. Might have been a couple of years ago by now. No, I think it was last year. I don't remember. And I laid out some of my criticisms of the game. And while I did really enjoy it, I think it is a great game. I also just don't have this interest in the format of those games where it's sort of on a calendar system. I've really kind of noticed that because Fire Emblem Three Houses also kind of follows that approach too. And I have not gone back to that game. I just don't really want to revisit it because it would just take us such a long time to go through just go through all of the kind of the daily tasks and the weekly tasks and all that. And if you want to recruit a certain character, you have to really you really got to put in some time to try to, sort of like bring, kind of recruit them to your team. There's just a lot of aspects of that. And that has been a big reason why I have not gone back to play through the other routes in the game. And that kind of methodology, that sort of gameplay style just doesn't really mesh with me for some reason. It feels like a lot of busy work for me. I really grew to dislike the interactions between characters where it was like, oh, you spend some time with this person and then, you have a whole conversation and then there's like another conversation piece where they just kind of reiterate and say the same exact thing again. By calling you, and just this repetition, it just was way too much for me, and I just grew kind of tired of it. And if it's gonna be anything like I get it, I totally it's like I value having those character interactions, but I just think that the format of that just did not. It just grew really tiring for me, and I'm worried that if Metaphor and if Persona 3 Reload is anything like that, and that just kind of might turn me off from those games. I'm a little, I don't know, and considering how big of a aspect social kind of links are in those games, I'm assuming that it would be beneficial for me to do those to for like stat boosts and also to to kind of get a better sense of characters and get a bit more in depth with those characters. But I just don't know if I would be able to handle that, and I just kind of realized that I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of thing too. So I'm a little kind of hesitant to get into it, maybe get back into it. I've heard great things about both of those games. But if it's going to be anything like Persona 5 Royal, I think I might just not, I don't know. I might have to just sort of put it to the side or not really play it. I know it feels weird saying that coming from someone who's such a big JRPG fan, but for some reason I just don't care for that. It's too much, you know what I mean? Like it's just not the most engaging play style for me, and gameplay for me. So I don't know. I've just been kind of considering that, and I don't know if I'm assuming that they're gonna get ports, so if they do pop up, I am curious about whether I would put them on my list of games that I want to play. I did have Persona 5 on there, which I did play, but I haven't added the other Persona games on there. I've heard, the 3 and 4 were also ported to the Switch, and I have considered, earlier I had considered getting into those and maybe picking those up. But yeah, after playing 5 Royal, I've kind of just, I've just sort of been a bit apprehensive to get into that. And hearing some of the, I watched some gameplay of Persona 4, and it just did not really look that appealing to me. Considering that it's, in a much smaller space, like it takes place in a town as opposed to in Tokyo. So there's less I'm assuming there's less to do, but maybe that kind of helps aid in its environment a little bit more. But man, I don't know. I'm a little hesitant, and it kind of sucks because I know, and I've heard that these are really great games, and I'm sure that there's a lot to appreciate. And maybe I just like skip all of the other, maybe I just skip the character building moments, even though that's kind of important and integral to the story and everything. I don't know. I'm just a little, I'm on the fence, and it's not at the top of my list to play. So I just wanted to I just wanted to voice that because I don't know. I've been kind of thinking about that because of I had my, again, I had sort of my qualms with 5. I had an overall great experience with it. It was very long in the tooth, and I think it overstayed its welcome, but I still enjoyed it. I just think that the social link aspect and just how drawn out some interactions can be was a bit of something that kind of I just wasn't a fan of. And if that's kind of the case and it applies to the other games as well, I might just kind of hold off on it until I'm really, I don't know, maybe I'm really feeling and wanting to kind of give those a chance. But that's just kind of what I'm wanted to express. So I'm going to start playing Witcher 3, I think tonight, and I'll give my thoughts on that the next time I record. And by then, I'm assuming maybe I'll record on Thursday, after I'm assuming a direct happens, and I can talk about that. But yeah, for now, that's gonna do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.